Oh, we changed hue. Hi, I'm here in the blue section. I do not have 5,000 years of experience in HR. Just gonna put that out right now in case you choose not to believe a word I say. You'd be like, oh, maybe she has like 1,000 years, like it doesn't matter. Whenever I do talk to HR crowds though, I feel like I have to explain my cred. Because when I was at Netflix, I never went out of the house. I spent 14 years under a rock, and then I came back out and realized I was part of the HR world. And having spent 14 years under a rock, I thought, wow, I'm going to come out and I'm going to look at all the great innovation that everybody else and all the other companies are doing, and I couldn't find much. So what I'm going to talk to you today is I'm going to use a lot of the same words that other people have used in the presentations before, but I'm going to use some of them differently. So about my background, I started out as a recruiter. And in some companies, that's kind of a bad word. And I think that's really foolish, and I'll get to that later. But one of the things about being a recruiter is that you look at the world really differently. You know that there's no special person that can't be replaced, and you actually are kind of happy when somebody leaves. Like, retention is like, oh, good, they left, we can find somebody else. Yay, more work. The other thing about it is it's quantifiable. I did this many phone calls, I did this many interviews, I made this many offers, I had this many people start. Of the people that I hired that started, this many were successful and this many weren't. So that's thing one that changed the way I look at work. The second one is, in order to be a great recruiter, and I was a great recruiter, I am a great recruiter, you gotta love the work that people do. You gotta sit down next to somebody while they're writing code and go, get out, that's numerals. How'd you make that do this, right? That's good stuff. Robotics, right? Logistics. So you have to love what people do at work. But I came up, like the rest of you, trying to be a good girl, and I failed. I first thought that my job in HR was to understand how people felt and make sure that they were engaged, while simultaneously protecting us from them. So imagine you go to work in the morning, and you go on the train, or you go in your car in Silicon Valley, everybody goes in the car, and you get out of the parking lot, and you look around at all those other cars and go, they're gonna sue me. Every one of them has come to work with the intention of screwing us over. That is not true, people, and we know that, okay? So today I'm gonna push your buttons a little bit about those simultaneously very weird dichotomous assumptions. We want to make them feel happy and engaged, but we got to make sure they don't sue us. Okay, so I want to start out with the concept of team. So I'm going to tell you the day that I stopped being and trying to be an HR professional and stopped trying to earn the title of business partner, the day I really became part of the business. So we also started at Netflix in 1997. Our first company was about trying to come up with a business model that would work and create revenue before we ran out of money. And that business was the DVD by mail business. How many of you guys did that? Oh, God. When I do these startups in San Francisco, they're like, my mom showed me SpongeBob on her laptop. I was sitting in her lap when I saw the DVD thing back when I was a child. Okay, so it's the year 2000. We think we've got an idea. We're on Sand Hill Road. For those of you that are familiar with the venture capital world, that's where we're pitching our IPO. We're going to be Yahoo for movies. We're going to have movie stars review our movies. We're going to order posters. We're going to have chat with movie stars. We're going to have $100 stock in private jets. And it didn't happen. And so 2001, we go into 2001, September 11th happened. Anthrax happened. Did I mention everything went through the mail? Everybody was out of work in the Bay Area, which were really our only customers because we weren't that good at shipping anything. If you're on the East Coast, you got a DVD 4 days later, it really sucked. And our bankers pulled our IPO. And we were very capital intensive. So for every single cent of profit that we had, which was really in the single cent mark at that point, we had to buy 3 DVDs and the stamps and the envelopes and the labor to put them in, okay? So in October of 2001, I laid off a third of the company. How many of you have ever done a layoff? Okay. It wasn't a big company, but it was a third, 30%. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Here's what my criteria was. I said goodbye to anybody who wasn't actively working on making DVD by mail a great customer experience. So the people who wrote for People magazine who were writing reviews about movies, gone, right? All the people whose job it was to approve somebody else's work, all middle management, gone. All the people who were not technically extraordinarily qualified to build our product, gone. And all the babies and whiners. And the reason why the babies and whiners had to go was, you know, at one point, you guys who've done this, the whiteboard exercise, and you're down to like the last 10 people and you're arguing about them, and the tech guys are like, you can't let John go. He's a brilliant engineer. I'm like, yeah, and he's a baby, and he's a whiner, and when he's not playing his guitar, he's complaining about the color of his t-shirt. And I can't tell him, we literally can't buy t-shirts anymore. Because a t-shirt's the price of a DVD. You know, I used to do, people from San Francisco would come down and go, yeah, at our startup, our tables are solid marble, and our chairs are all Aeron chairs. I'd be like, you know those Aeron chairs are $800? You know how many DVDs we could buy for $800? Do you know how many customers we could make happy for $800? I mean, I literally started speaking in those words. So I said goodbye to everybody. At the end of the day, I stood up on a chair. This is how you know you're a small company, when you can stand on a chair and address the company. Well, we were a third smaller, so it was easy. And I said, we are not your family. We're not your family. We're a business. We're transparent. You understand what the P&L looks like. You understand that we're out of money. You understand that the only thing we have left to cut is salaries. And those people that aren't with us anymore, they're amazing, wonderful, fabulous people. And we can't afford them. That's the truth. And so, and I decided I was just going to stop. How many people say family at work? How many people have laid off a family member? No. It's not, so I mean, like at that moment, I realized that it wasn't my job to keep people happy or protect me from these very few employees we had to pull it off. It was my job to create a fabulous and amazing team. So the part of that chapter that I'll finish off with was in December of 2001, DVD player prices dropped to $99, and every single one of you had one under the Christmas tree. And you opened it up, and there was a coupon inside that said, try Netflix for free. And our business went literally straight up. But remember, I don't have any money. So every single cent we bring, we have to buy DVDs and stamps and envelopes and buy people who can put them in. And so we were doing twice as much work with a third as many people. And it was more fun. Who's read the Netflix culture deck? Okay. This is when, if you've read it, we wrote the chapter called High Performance. Because I realized that the reason we were getting twice as much work done with a third as many people and having more fun was that people were drawing a direct line between the work that they did and making a customer happy. Because they had to. And they had to understand it. And I learned that the most important learning and development tool, the most important training I could teach them was how to read a P&L. So they'd understand this activity produces revenue, this does not. The choice is pretty straight up. Right? This activity makes a happy customer. By the way, we had no money for marketing, none. Our only growth was word of mouth. So what were we there to do every single day? Make somebody so happy they'd tell somebody else for free. So I have another team story that's my Canada story. And you guys are the first audience I've told this story to that you'll get it. So I leave Netflix, I start speaking. I'm invited to speak in Montreal at this place called the Bell Center in February. I've never been to Montreal. It seems like a lovely place to go, and I don't know what February's like there. because I'm from California. I call up my daughter, I'm like, hey, which coat do you think I should bring? She's like, go to Patagonia, get a puffy coat, get a big one, put it on, take it with you. I'm like, yeah, but I don't really need. She's like, Mom, there's no arguing here. So I get a hotel that allows me to walk underground to the Bell Center because I hear it can be pretty cold. Oh my God, how do you people live like that? It's like Botox, like instantly you go outside your face, it's just like, I can't move. So at the last minute, I'm supposed to keynote, and I'm supposed to talk about teamwork, but at the last minute, they got this other speaker to join, which I think was their first choice, but he said no, but then he came on, so we were panel discussing it. And he's this man called Scotty Bowman. Who knows who that is? Scotty Bowman is the winningest National Hockey League coach in the history of, I don't know, the world. I look him up, he seems like a pretty interesting guy. I walk underground to the Bell Center, I'm down below with Mr. Bowman. He's a 70-year-old man, he's very nice, and we're talking about his grandkids and golf. And he says, Patty, we're under the ice. And I want to impress you how smart I am, but it is until that moment I realized, we're in a hockey stadium. We're in a hockey stadium. Right? I'm used to you guys are a big group for me. This is a hockey stadium. So I walk down, I come up the stage, and I walk out on stage. It's a hockey stadium. My face is on the Jumbotron. Like, ah! And speaking of Botox face, I'm like, I'm cool with this, I do this all the time. There is thousands of people there, right? And people are, Canadians, very polite. Oh yes, Patty McCord, thank you. And the guy that's emceeing is like a radio talk show host, and he's got the moves, and he's got the teleprompter, and I go sit on my sofa and try and breathe normally. I'm doing my Lamaze. Up walks Scott Bowman, and the place goes wild. I mean, it's instant standing ovation. Every guy in the room's trying to take a selfie with him. So he sits down next to me, and the moderator says, Mr. Bowman, you're the winningest coach in hockey. You've coached so many teams to incredible success. You've worked with all the greats. What's your secret to teamwork and feedback? And he said, well, we play an 80-game season. Every 10 games, I sit down with each of my players. They do a self-evaluation. I do an evaluation of them. I run all the statistics and data on their performance in the last 10 games. I talk to many other members of the team, and I talk to the other team coaches, the other special coaches. And we have a conversation about what's worked so far and what we need to continue to improve on, what we think our challenges are, because as we both know, the objective is to win. And we want to win together as a team. Patty McCord, you've often said that you think the annual performance review is a complete waste of time. And I do. But I haven't heard you say or write about what you think you would do in the alternative. And what might that be, Ms. McCord? And I said, what he said. And so I realized that when I was looking for inspiration after leaving the company, I was kind of looking in all the wrong places. And so one of the things I want to invite you to do is look outside of our own little world, of which I'm going to criticize this a little. People make fun of us behind our backs. We know that, so I'm going to say that at the beginning of this conference so that you can stop saying embarrassing things that other people will talk about. So I go from Montreal to Dublin, Ireland, and I'm there on stage with the winningest coach of the Irish games. Is anybody Irish? Okay, they have their own games. They have a sport called hurling. That's wrong. Right? Oh, yeah, we hurled, you got the stick. And so the winningest coach in the Irish games says, I look for people with strength. I look for them with athletic ability. I look for them with the passion to win. I look for spirit. And I learned from him too. So the idea of team is about thinking about winning, okay? All of you exist in the companies that you're at not to make people happy that work there. You exist to make people happy that don't work at your company. They're called customers or clients. That's who you live for. That's why you're here, right? The Saba Halogen folks didn't invite you here just because they love you. They invite you here because they love you. You are what matters to them, right? And so I want you to each go home looking at your own life and knowing that your job is to create an organization of teams that create amazing things for your customers. And I want you to change your perspective about those people. If you assume that they are fully formed, trustworthy adults, like the engagement stuff, Press, I think that's really interesting. And I wonder if we just changed our assumption, if that might move the needle a little bit. If we said, really, no, people really do want to come in and do great work. Instead of trying to figure out what's wrong with them, why don't we figure out what's right with the ones that are engaged? And then when we go to measure that, I believe I have an assumption that is kind of unique, but I want you to consider it. I think that we don't have to create our own internal metrics. I think the metrics of running a business are already in the business. So when you're doing that annual performance review, because you always have, because it's best practices, which literally means what everybody else does. You guys know that, right? Nobody measures it. Nobody says that this company achieves better results than this company because they do their annual performance review this way and this company doesn't, right? So when you talk about, and retention is not a business metric. That's an HR metric. In case you're wondering, the business metrics are profit, revenue, growth, right? And when you have a team that's not delivering a product on time with quality, right, over and over again, then you can take that business metric, and that's when you dig in and find out why. And if the software isn't shipping because finance is pointing to IT, who's pointing to HR, then the issue isn't the software. But the metric is a business metric that you can dive down into. And the more that you think about the work that you do and the results that you have in the terms of business metrics, the more you will be heard. And part of the reason people get frustrated in HR about not having a seat at the table, it's that you invite somebody to the table who can't speak the language that everybody else at the table is speaking. And you have to have an interpreter. Right? And so you get to play, but you're not fully engaged, right? So the more you can talk about what you're doing in the business metrics, but the words of business, the more you'll be heard. High performance and results can be all that matter. You know you make a difference when the team is working more effectively and efficiently. You know that when you take the software that these guys are here to talk to you about and you put it to work in your business, and you can say, this team and this team are now communicating with each other, they're now giving each other better feedback, they're now operating more efficiently, and by the way, that's creating an increase in revenue or an increase in customer engagement or whatever those things are. I was talking to somebody last night, I don't see you here at dinner, and we were talking about United. And like, oh boy, whew. But, you know, the real story of the United issue last week is that the people at United work for United, not for me, who, by the way, I got between midnight and 7 a.m. 7 texts last Saturday telling me that my flight had changed 7 different times. Because I'm sure that's what the software did, right? So the company wasn't serving the person that matters, me, the flying public. I work with engineers my whole life. I love them. I'm a geek fan. It's creepy, but I do. And here's what I love about them. Who knows engineers, right? Y'all got, So you know what I'm talking about. The world is so digital to them. It's good or bad, it's right or wrong, it's black or white, it's 0 or 1. And anything in between is bullshit and it's spin. Am I right? Right? And so what I learned from them is that, and people have this misnomer that, they hate process, they hate procedure. They do. They hate stupid process and senseless procedure, but they love discipline. So I started changing my vocabulary to say, I'm thinking that in this particular instance, when we do interviewing, that if we have a couple of tried and true rules, you must show up on time, you must be prepared with your questions, you must follow up at the end of the day, you must ask something, you have a discipline around that process. They love that stuff because it makes sense. So when you go through and you do the stuff because it's best practice, because of the way you've always done it, and the engineers roll their eyes at you, there's a reason. So you want to make sure you dig into those people who have digital brains, because they'll tell you the truth because they can't really lie. They would if they could, they can't, so they won't. And then I told you about Spirit. So we hired a lot of talented people at Netflix, and people would ask me, where do you find them? And I'd say, well, there's an island that only I know about. And all the A players are there, and I just go there. So if you go back to my team metaphor and you think about talent, talent is about putting together the right people that can do the right thing that you need to do at the right time. So I'm going to tell you a Netflix story that's a little bit geeky while we're on Geeks, and I told this to somebody this morning. So at one point at Netflix, we had some very good years, and we had grown 30% quarter over quarter, 3 quarters in a row. Hell yeah. Reed was on the cover of Fortune. We were having an executive meeting, and Reed wanted to talk about, what if everything went to hell in a hand? He loved disaster planning. Like, what if it all went to hell? And I said, just for once, just one day, could we do happy planning? What if this kept up for 3 more quarters? It won't pass, it's impossible. I'm like, just what if, right? So our CFO's doing top line revenue like this. Because 30% quarter over quarter, 3 quarters in a row compounded. I mean, it's like your, Moore's Law. It's like, wow! And Ted Sarandos, who is still the head of content at Netflix, so in those days we'd say, one of these days, we'll be as big as HBO. And we meant in our lifetimes. And Ted says, shit, you guys, it's next year. And we all went, and our head of product, Neil Hunt, British guy, says, oh, right, well, that's 1/3 of the US internet bandwidth. Yeah, this same reaction we had. I'm like, and I'm doing my dog that hears the sound only dogs can hear. What? So I'm like, after the meeting, you and I, let's talk. So I'm like, who knows how to manage 1/3 of the US internet bandwidth? Oh, don't know, quite a large amount of data, bits flowing over the internet. I'm like, okay. It's not us, right? He's like, oh, no, our data center, it's built for logistics of shipping DVD software. We don't, I'm like, okay, who? So we're brainstorming, is it Google, is it Amazon, is it eBay? Who's moving that amount of data across the internet? And so we start thinking about, and he says, it's got to be in the cloud, right? We can't do it in a data center. We've got to go to cloud technology. So you guys have heard these kind of conversations. So we sit down with our IT team. Now, our IT team are amazingly talented people. They're incredible. We could ship a DVD to you in a nanosecond, completely accurately. They built that software. They built that data center. So we sit down with the team, we tell them, okay, here's what we were talking about ESAP the other day. What do you guys think? They're like, no worries. You guys go exec something, we're going to build a cloud for you. Got this one. And I looked at them and I said, you know what? Honestly, if there was a team of people on the planet that could do that, could build a cloud from scratch, it probably is you guys. But not in 9 months. You don't know anything about it. We had to get a team from Yahoo or from eBay or from Google or from Amazon because the scale was 100 times bigger than the scale we knew. And so my experience is that problems of, early stage companies have problems of difficulty. And the thing about problems of difficulty is you can solve them by working hard, right? I'm just gonna keep working at it, not that. And most of the problems you solve by screwing it up and realizing that was the wrong answer. You make a lot of mistakes. And then when you get to problems of step functional scale, then they are problems of complexity. And some people can handle ever-increasing problems of complexity. There are those people whose brains just keep doing that. But problems of scale are very difficult, right? I think humans can imagine maybe 10 times what we do, but I don't think you can imagine 100 unless you've seen 50. So we had to go hire a team from Yahoo, which we got in between CEOs. By the way, if you're ever looking for technical people, pay attention to when Yahoo's in between CEOs. Good time to go get the technical people, because they don't pay attention. But I sat down with that IT team, and they said, well, what the hell does this mean for us if you're going to go hire a team out of another company? And I said, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And now that we have, and I learned to say a couple things. If I had to hire the team to solve this problem now, it wouldn't be you. And you're amazing. We got 9 months to figure it out. And what I learned from that exchange, and many exchanges I had when the business takes a turn, is that humans can hear anything if it's true. I did not put 35 people on a performance improvement plan because they were exceptional performers, right? What if performance improvement plan really meant what we say? It's too bad we've lost it, huh? Because now it means you're going to get fired. Instead of, wow, let's put together a plan and improve your performance, a la Scotty Bowman. So I sat down and realized, okay, well, we got 9 months to figure this out, but I should probably be making sure that people start looking way before then. And I should probably, instead of taking 90 days for the performance improvement plan to prove that they're not performing, which isn't true because they are, well, that'll be my baseline for severance. And we'll save each other a lot of money. So the reason I'm giving you that example is that the performance improvement plan as a tool has become a cynical notion for most employees for a reason. So if that's what you do at your company, I'm completely okay with that. But make sure that you're doing something to actually improve somebody's performance and that you're not covering your ass for the fact that they might sue you. Because to be honest with you, come on, this is our business. How many times y'all been in court the last year? Anybody, raise your hand, you've been in court last year because somebody sued you. Okay, that's what, maybe 5%? The rest of us have people who have done things that we wish they didn't do. The rest of us have managers who have done things we wish they hadn't done. Why do people sue companies? Because they're pissed. They feel like they've been mistreated. I tell my startups, like, you want to avoid lawsuits, don't screw them. So I just want you to think about that my experience with people's performance, if you hire somebody who can't perform the job you hired them to do, that's not their fault at all. If they technically can't do it, that's fault of the interview process. They bear no responsibility for that. It happens sometimes. It particularly happens when we hire a job we've never hired before, and we think you can, but you can't because we didn't really know what it was. And so, when that happens, as soon as it happens, you go, I'm sorry, man. I love you. You're trying, but you're trying to do something that we all got it wrong. So, let's call it a day. It's almost always that the business changes or step functional change happens. Almost always. Which leads me to my algorithm for success. I work with geeks, so I say algorithm. What's an algorithm? It's a mathematical sentence that has to be true. Is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at? And I teach my algorithm to every young person who's willing to talk to me about their future. I did not say millennial. I'm going to pepper the talk with words I hate. Millennial. You were a millennial. I was a millennial. It's called being 20-something. What do you want? Everything. When do you want it? Now. My son just turned 30. I'm like, what are you now, a thirlineal? He's engaged. He quit his job with the free haircuts, the chihuahua, and the bartending classes because he's not learning anything, right? And did something different, which the millennials will do. And when millennials act like they don't know what the hell they're doing, you know why that is? They don't know what the hell they're doing. They've never worked before, right? So, expecting them to grow up and get it right just is not going to happen. So, when I talk with them, I say, here's the deal. When you start out in your career, you don't really know what you love to do until you do something you hate. Like, wow, I thought I was going to love this. This sucks, right? But as you get older, you know this. And when your employees come in and go, I don't think the company appreciates me for what I do or what I can do and what I have to offer, the answer may be they don't. Here's another one. When we hire somebody to do a job, and then they do it, and then it's done, and now all of a sudden we got to worry about their career for the rest of their life? Like, does that sound fantastical to you? Because it is. How many people are in the job they got when they got out of college? They couldn't retain you? Oh, you guys work for a lot of really sucky companies with really bad HR. Okay, so this algorithm will really help you when somebody's complaining. It may be that what they love to do, they've already done, and you just don't need them to do it anymore. And it may be what they've learned to love to do has an incredible opportunity in another place in the company. But it's not your job to figure out the algorithm, it's their job too. So 50% of great teamwork is the people on the team's ability to understand. If I go back to my sports team metaphor, no one joins a professional sports team and goes, man, when I'm 55, this is going to be great. I'm going to be so experienced, right? They're going to find a place. You swap people out all the time, right? So I'm not recommending that you swap people out all the time. I'm just recommending that you be realistic about it. And you talk to people about where they fit in your organization and where they fit as part of your team. And you talk to your team when you go from playing rugby to playing soccer, because your business changes. Trust me at Netflix. So I have a phone story where Steve Jobs, Reed Hastings, who's CEO of Netflix, says to Neil, product guy, and me, guess who called me today? I'm like, I don't know. Who, Mr. Famous? Steve Jobs. I'm like, get out. What did Steve Jobs have to say? And he goes, well, he's got this product. This was after the iPhone. And we streamed to the iPhone. And he wants us to be an app on this new product. I'm like, well, what is it? And he said, well, we're to refer to it as the transformational device. Like, oh, well, okay, well, so it's going to be transformational. When do they want? And he goes, it's Apple, they don't really have schedules. Well, what's the technology stack? Well, we won't know until we commit. I'm like, okay, but we have this to do, and this to do, and this to do, and this to do, and we're fully booked, and I've got all kinds of people to hire, and this is completely off schedule. And he said, you know what, if you guys tell me we can't do it, I'll call him back and say we'll do the next version. It'll be fine, right? And so we go back to our technical team and we're like, hey, by the way, we have this opportunity to be on this device at Apple. And what do they say? Hell yeah, right? And I'm arguing, well, what about, cloud integration? What about, international expansion? What about blah, 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 blah? And they're all like, okay, I'll get out the midnight oil. So we put together a little team of people, and this is a true story. Only 7 of them are allowed to go into the room to observe the device, which rests on a velvet platform. I'm serious. Accompanied by an Apple employee. Right now, I'm not one of them. So when they come back, I'm like, so how was it? And they're like, it was so transformational. So it's the iPad, of course, right? So they launched on the iPad, and we're, all huddled around the computer because we're not invited to the Macworld Expo where it's, and we see it's the first app that he shows on the iPad. So then the next week, I do what I do at Netflix. I walk into my product meeting, and I'm like, oh my God! Touch technology is transformational. I mean, it is incredible. It's so primal. To put your finger on something and have it work. I mean, how profound is this? Last night I was at dinner, and the 3-year-old next to me in the high chair was streaming SpongeBob. There's a 1-year-old, he can't talk. He's watching stuff. It's unbelievable. I can't wait until I walk into my media room and I swipe the wall and I get to watch a movie I want to watch. And they start doing this thing like jazz musicians do. One of them goes, "Oh no, man, we're not gonna make you get up." No, you pull out your phone and it'll have a moodometer, and somebody else goes, "Yeah, you put your thumb on it and you'll be sad." And somebody else goes, and it'll say, "Oh, Patty, are you sad?" And a romantic comedy starring all your favorite actors and actresses will immediately start playing. And I thought, they are going to do this someday. There's going to be a team of people in a room somewhere that are going to make that happen. Why not me? Why not me? Right? And here's what innovators do that's different than you and I. And I want to invite you to look into the future and say, I can be an innovator. An innovator might say, I have a theory that giving people feedback on their performance positively might improve their performance. Something other than critical feedback in arrears. I'm going to create a system for that. Let's get a group together and let's brainstorm that. What would we do? And if somebody came up with the annual performance review in that team, you would look at them and go, there's an idea. I want you to ask why about everything you do. And I want you to think like an innovator. It's very scientific, it's not that hard. What problem am I trying to solve here? Right? I'm trying to get better talent in the room. I'm trying to reframe an organization. I'm trying to communicate what an acquisition looks like. What do I want that to look like? How is that going to be great? So you look 6 months out and you say, if I do this amazing thing and the team is incredible, and they're doing stuff that's everybody is amazed at, what's occurring then that's not occurring now? Give me all your numerals. It's more revenue, it's faster, it's more complete, it's on time, whatever that is. And then make a movie of it. Watch people doing stuff. Are there more meetings or are there less meetings? Are people arguing and winning? Are they heads down, are they working? Are they walking in with a whole new idea about things? Or are they being consistent and true? Whatever it is. What's occurring then that's not occurring now? Behaviorally. Then you drop down and go, wow, in order for people to know how to do that, what would they need to know how to do? Well, you might need somebody who's pretty confident getting up off their chair and walking over to marketing and going, that last campaign was totally sucky. What was up with you guys? I'm going to go back and tell the engineers because none of them like it, right? Or they might need to know how to work step functionally, in more complexity at scale. What are those things? What do people need to know how to do? Then you drop down and you say, what kind of skills and experience would it take for somebody to know how to do that in order to accomplish that? And then, and only then, who do you got? And if you walk through that discipline, then you can have a conversation with a team, with a company, and with an individual. And you can say, here's what the future looks like. And if you walked in the door today, I'm not sure I'd find a place for you. Or here's what the future looks like, and I know what you love to do, and I know what you're great at doing, and you have a really important part in it. Let's make sure that we set you up to be incredibly successful there. And so that's thinking like a business person, that's thinking like a product person, that's thinking like an innovator. It's not that hard, you can do it too. So when you design for change, you want to make sure that your communication, and I talk about communication as a heartbeat, You know, the company meetings you have, the team meetings you have, the emails that you have, the way, you know, and if your company is going through change, which apparently some of you are, revisit the heartbeat in both companies, right? What is it that people need to hear? What is it should they expect to hear? You know, part of great communication is setting up people's expectations. Hey, that's a great question. That's a good question that we want to make sure that we ask at the quarterly meeting, because we're still figuring it out. And you teach people how to make good decisions about decisions, right? So when someone says, we were talking about it this morning, when somebody says, I think management's a bunch of idiots, I think that decision was stupid. Management. Then you can say, great, you want to be in management someday? If you're making that decision, what factors would you consider to make that decision? Because problem finders, they're cheap. And you know, when people come to you with I've observed a problem that I don't think management's aware of, like, okay, here's one. Early in Netflix days, I had this guy. Management doesn't understand that things aren't like they used to be, and we're not a little company anymore, and everybody doesn't know everybody. You hear this one? I'm like, well, I report to the CEO, I'm a vice president, call me management. I've talked to Reed about this 4 times, maybe 7. You've talked to me about it 17 times. Do you know what we want to be when we grow up? What? A global corporation. And you don't want to do that, and that's okay, right? It looks like a 50, 100-person startup is a sweet spot for you, and that's okay. That's not who we want to be. And do you know why things are changing? Because we're successful. We were talking this morning, startups, here's the end game. Bigger, smaller, eaten. Smaller's death. The other 2 are just fine. Right? It means the growth. It means change, right? So you want to be clear. You want to be able to you, we, us. We must model honest conversation. People don't naturally tell the truth. They say what's nice. And we've got to be sure that we're modeling honesty and clarity and not nice. Because you know what I'm talking about. Right? Manager comes in and goes, she's out of here, man. She's fired. I'm just coming in here to fire because I've told her. I've warned her. She's going to see this coming. I'm like, great, sit right here. I'm going to go ask her how she's doing. Oh, well, it was a while ago. Was that our last one-on-one? Really, when was that? February. It's May. So, just saying. And then you go talk to that person. You guys have done this. Hey, what up? I don't know. Every 6 months, I've been here 6 years, and every 6 months he gets mad at me, and we have a one-on-one where face turns red. He starts talking about my interdepartmental communication issues, whatever they are, because I've been here 6 years, and there's always been that other department. And so I look really sad, and sometimes I cry because he yells, and then I avoid him for 6 months. Or I throw him a problem over here, and he goes chasing after that problem, and he leaves me alone, and I just do my job, and I do my job well. I've been here 6 years. And other than that interdepartmental communication issue, whatever the hell that is, everything's fine. And so our job is to teach people how to use words. Reality. And use, and to look at, if you use the software that you're looking at here, to take that data that you get and look for trends and look for hotspots. So it was a great example, right? You got a happy team that's not producing. What up with that? Right? You got an unhappy team that's producing incredibly. What up with that? I'm friends with Bob Homan, who's the CEO of Glassdoor. You guys all know Glassdoor, right? Glassdoor's been around 20 years. Glassdoor has inordinate amounts of data about people and their job satisfaction. Glassdoor, he said to me, he goes, I said, HR people hate Glassdoor. He goes, not any more than CEOs do. He said, here's the interesting thing, because they think that it's all full of negative stuff that, the unhappy employees post. And he said, it is, but he's like, that's only really 50%. 50% of it's good stuff, but HR people and CEOs don't ever read the good stuff. They skip down to that was the guy we fired. So you remember the Amazon story about a year ago? The New York Times did a story on Amazon's culture, the scathing, takedown of the Amazon culture. So Bob said that the reporters came to him and asked him about Amazon, and he said it tripped an interesting thing that they've been working on since that story was written. So he said, consistently, Amazon's been part of Glassdoor for 20 years. He's like, seriously, for 20 years, Jeff Bezos is in the top 5 CEOs, ranks in the top 5. Love to work for it, 90% approval rating. It also ranks in the top 10 of companies you'd recommend to work for. And it always ranks at the bottom for work-life balance. And he said, there's this weird reverse correlation with some companies that isn't for everybody, where people work their butts off, but they get incredible stuff done. And so I'm not advocating the Amazon culture. I'm just saying, and if you talk to anybody at Amazon, they'll tell you, oh man, these guys are slave drivers. But Amazon has something, another concept I want you to consider. So when Reed called me in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning, to tell me about Netflix and asked me if I wanted to join, I said no, because I'm a rational human being. That was the stupidest idea I ever heard in my life. DVDs in the mail. DVD players cost $1,500. He and 3 other people I knew had one. I'm like, what are you going to mail them to each other? We all had rooms full of VHS tapes. So I'm like, that's thing one. Thing two is I'm consulting. I work part-time. I'm buff. I'm bronze. My kids know my name. Why would I go do another startup with you? Call somebody that doesn't know what you're talking about. And 3, will you give me anything I want? Because I'm awake now. And he says, well, I don't know, what do you want? And I said, no bozos, no assholes. And he's like, maybe. And he said, I just want to create a place, like, what if we're successful, that we'd still want to work there? And I want to create a company that would be great to be at. I said, how would you know if we did that? And he said, I'd walk in the door every day and want to solve these problems with these people. And I just saw him last week, and he's still, like, you know what we're doing in China? And he said, Patty, what would it be for you? And I said, I'd want us to be a great place to be from. I'd want it to, like, if you saw Netflix on your resume. Remember, at this time, how many customers did we have? -40. That's an incredible aspiration. But it's like, what if we were cool like Apple or Google? And if you go to work tomorrow, Monday, whenever you go, and you say, I'm going to make the company I work for a great place to be from, because I know that not everybody's going to be here forever, then you're going to create teams and organizations that get incredible stuff on time with quality that you can walk away from and tell the next person you interview with, wow, you should see what I did at my last company. You should see, here's 10 things I went home and told my dog or my spouse. You know what we did at work today? It was incredible. We got it done. That's engagement. That's satisfaction. Okay? I tell women when I do women's groups, I'm like, engagement does not mean they put a ring on it. And by the way, when you interview with another company to find out what you're worth, which you all should do, you're not cheating on your husband, right? That's not what engagement means, but we kind of worry that it does. Reality, judgment. You guys both talked about this today. Judgment is a factor that machines may learn to do, but right now we're the ones that are good at it. And in fact, I think it's the most valuable skill of anybody in a company. So, I talked to you a little bit about innovation. I talked to you a little bit about transformation. And so now what I want to do is talk specifically about what we in HR need to do to make this reality happen. We got to stop with the special language, you guys. I have a friend who was at a startup. She came outside of HR. She came in from business. She was a strategy person. And I thought that what this team needed was a strategic executive, much more so than a traditional HR person. But she jumped right in to do all those things that all of her HR friends told her she had to do. So she sent me a copy of her. Now this company had 75 Harry Shave. You guys know about Harry Shave? They mail razor blades, and right, so they're competing with Gillette. So she sends me her compensation plan, and it's got, you know, job families, and I said, well, how'd you come up with these job families and salary ranges? Did you use Radford? Yes, I did. Radford's the most trusted survey in the industry. And I said, kind of a bitch to match the jobs of like shipping razor blades with the Radford survey. She goes, oh no, it took my team a whole month to try and just match the jobs because they don't match. But they did it. So I said, so you've chosen to pay in the 65th percentile? Yes, I have. We believe that's the right place for us to be in terms of our, you know, fiscal responsibility. And I said, can I be an employee? They're employees. You know, there's nobody over 30 in the whole company. Who gets the other 35%? And she goes, well, that's not what percentile means. I'm like, I know that, and you know that, and nobody else in the entire planet knows that. And why did you choose to have all D players, C and D players? She goes, well, that's not, what are you saying? Are you saying if I pay people 65%, then I'm going to get C and D players? I'm like, yeah. You get what you pay for, right? I've come to believe that pay is market-based. It's real estate. You're worth what somebody else will pay you. Honestly. Speaking of pay, I'm going to take a little sidetrack. I'm going to do a little sidebar here. I want to talk to you about equal pay. Which 3 departments in any company have the most women in them? PR and marketing, HR, finance. We own 2 of them. Fixed pay. You want to be empowered? You know, this is not brain surgery. This is not going to take Saba software to do a spreadsheet and look at average male pay and average female pay by job title, and if it's different, true it up. Because if you have a 6.5% merit increase budget with a bell curve distribution, rating and ranking, enforced salary distribution, and you hire a woman who comes in 20% under what they're worth, and she's amazing, and you give her double what you give everybody else, you give her 13%. Now she only sucks by 7. She will never catch up, okay? And her only alternative, if she wants to be paid what she's worth, is to leave. And when I talk to women's groups, I'm like, you want to know how to fix this? Walk. That's when people are going to realize it. So we own this. We own this. You can't fix it all at once. I don't expect you to wave a magic wand and do it. Oh, here's another word. Empowerment. You're empowered. I'm in HR. I can empower you because I have the wand. You know why we have to empower people? Because we took it all away. If you have to ask permission from finance to spend over the, you know, if you go above $5,000, you have to request permission from finance to spend more than that because finance knows the difference between 5,000 and 5,050. I mean, is that added value? Don't you want people that already can do that math? You know, you want people in finance and people in HR who, instead of approving, analyze. You said it already. Say, you know, I've noticed that you've got a lot of expenditures on your team that are $10,000, $15,000, and we budgeted for like $5,000 each. What up? Did we budget wrong? Did something happen in the business? Is something changing? Do you want more? Or, here's a classic one, it's January, you get the head count back in, we finally roll it back to us in HR, and everybody's front-loaded all their hires in January. Right? They looked at who they hired last year, they doubled it, and they put them all in January. There's no way in hell you're going to hire that many people in January, but everybody does it. But you can go back and say, you know, you did this last year and the year before and the year before and the year before that. Here's actually what your hiring trends look like. So instead of hiring those first 100 people in January, which is not going to happen, let's spread 10 out over the next 10 months because that gives us time to assimilate them, that gives us time to look for great people, it sets our expectation, so we're not panicked. We may need 100 people, but if we go hire 100 people in January, 50 of them won't be the right people. They'll just be breathing, right? This is what we do. This is what we own. This is our function. This adds value. We give people back the power they walked in the door with. They all do. You do. So take it back. Business metrics are enough. I already said that. Best practices. When that words come out of your mouth. This is best practice. Reed asked me to do a study for him one time on stock options. We had just gone public, and so I was doing a presentation for him of restricted stock units. You guys know what I'm talking about here? You guys have stock? I know a lot of you don't. It's really, really complicated. And so I'm going through the presentation, and he says, can you stop for a sec? Like, what is this? And I said, oh, it's deferred comp. And he goes, well, why don't we call it deferred comp? And I said, well, the government found out that we've been printing money out here in the Silicon Valley, and they kind of don't like it. So we're kind of working our way around it. So executives have these bonus plans in the out years, and so we're doing restricted stock units. He goes, how complicated? Why is it so complicated? I'm like, oh, dude, I haven't even gotten to taxes. You know, he goes, well, who's going to do the taxes? I'm like, the team of people I'm going to hire to do the taxes for the restricted stock units. He goes, who does this? And I said, everybody. You asked me to do best practices, Reed. And he goes, why? And I said, well, HR people, we're kind of sheepy. And this is what Google does. And they're the cool new company, and so we're all doing what Google does. And he goes, well, what did we do before Google? I'm like, whatever Microsoft did. Be experts, be advocates, know what you own. It matters, but make sure you can articulate why it matters in business terms. If I have the right team of the right people to deliver this product that will serve our customer on time with quality, then we're going to be a better company. And you and your teams are responsible for making that happen. It's that simple. But what I want you to do and what I want to leave you with is, you can do everything that everybody else does. You can keep doing everything you've always done because it worked. I really am not saying you need to throw everything away. But maybe one thing, just one thing, you know, that everybody says is stupid and you know it's stupid and you do it anyway. So, just for a thought, I did one with my headcount report one time. I realized that, it was 15 pages long and the CC list was 47 people. And it was taking somebody until midnight, the last night of the quarter, to do it. And one time I just said, don't send it tomorrow. She's like, oh my God, 47 people on this list, heads are gonna roll. Guess how many people complained? And they were in finance, and I got the data from payroll. I mean, really. So, I didn't know what to do, but somehow, this is what we do. We're pattern recognizers. And when you open your mouth and you think, bullshit's gonna come out of my mouth. Don't do it, okay? Ask why, try something new, throw away one thing old, and thank you for having me.